Hey, before we jump right in, a super quick shout out to CertFuel for bringing us this explainer. They have an incredible full Series 3 course with adaptive study quizzes, smart flashcards, and unlimited practice exams that are weighted exactly like the real thing. Definitely check them out at certfuel.com. Okay, let's get into it. Today, we are tackling the one topic that absolutely destroys more Series 3 exam scores than almost anything else.
But to get this right, I need you to do something for me right now. I need you to forget literally everything you think you know about margin. Seriously, take whatever you know about stock market margin, pack it into a little mental box, and just throw that box straight out the window. We are starting totally fresh. So let's do a quick pattern interrupt just to see exactly where your head's at. True or false? When you trade futures on margin, you are borrowing money from your broker. I want you to actually pause this explainer right now and lock in your guess. Go ahead, I'll wait.
All right, we're back. The answer is a massive echoing false. And this right here perfectly illustrates our very first major exam trap. If you treat futures margin like buying stock on margin, the exam writers are going to bait you into picking the wrong answer every single time. Look, in the stock market, margin means a partial payment. You pay half, the broker lends you the rest, right? But in futures, absolutely no money is borrowed. Zero, none at all.
So what the heck is it then? Well, the futures industry actually uses a totally different term for margin to clear this whole mess up, and it's called a performance bond. A performance bond is simply a good faith security deposit. It's just a small percentage of the contract's full notional value that you post up front to prove you can cover potential adverse price moves. It literally just guarantees you will meet the contract's obligations. It is absolutely not a down payment toward buying a commodity. Let's use a slightly ridiculous but highly effective analogy here. Let me introduce our two characters for today. We've got Trey the trader, who wants to buy futures contracts, so he's going long. And we have Fiona the farmer, who wants to sell futures contracts to hedge her crops. She's going short. Now, I want you to imagine the futures exchange is a wildly paranoid landlord. When Trey and Fiona sign a lease, the landlord does not loan them money for rent. No way. The landlord says, "Give me a security deposit so I know you aren't going to flake out and completely trash the place." That money just sits there as proof that they'll honor the deal. It's not a loan, it is just held as security.
Okay, time to pause the explainer again. I really want you to think about this one. Who actually has to post this performance bond with our paranoid landlord? Is it Trey the trader, who is going long, or is it Fiona the farmer, who is going short? Lock in your answer. The answer is both. And honestly, this is another huge exam trap. In the regular securities world, only the buyer posts margin because they are the one borrowing cash to buy the asset. But remember, a futures contract creates a binding legal obligation for the buyer and the seller. Trey is obligated to buy, and Fiona is obligated to sell. Because both sides carry this massive financial obligation, both Trey and Fiona have to cough up a performance bond. If a test answer ever tries to tell you that only the buyer posts margin, run the other way. That is describing securities, not futures.
Now, let's completely dismantle this confusion with an ultimate showdown. We are going to compare futures margin directly against securities margin, which is governed by the Federal Reserve Board. Let's start with the core concept. For futures, it's a security deposit. For securities, it's a partial payment. What about a loan? Futures involves zero borrowing, while securities means the broker-dealer is actively lending you cash. Who posts it? Futures requires both the long and the short to pay up. Securities, just the buyer. And finally, ownership. In futures, you own absolutely nothing yet. It's literally just a promise for the future. But in securities, you actually own the shares right then and there. You really need to memorize these differences because the exam absolutely loves to mix these columns up to trick you. Let's test if that showdown actually just stuck in your brain. Pause and think about this. Let's say Trey the trader deposits his performance bond to go long on a bunch of corn futures. Does Trey pay interest on his margin? No, he absolutely does not. This is a massive exam trap alert. Just think about it logically based on everything we just covered. If there is no loan, how on earth could there possibly be interest? Trey is just depositing his own money into an account as a guarantee. The broker isn't lending him a single dime, so zero interest accrues. If a multiple choice option ever mentions Trey paying interest on his margin or owning the underlying commodity right now, cross it out. It is a 100% wrong answer. So the absolutely crucial point here is that we know what a performance bond is and we know exactly who pays it. But let's keep moving briskly to the next highly tested topic. Who pulls the strings? Who actually looks at the market and sets these minimum performance bond requirements? Well, here is your answer, and it's a classic whodunit exam trap. The correct answer is the exchanges.
working through their clearinghouse risk management functions. They are the ones who establish the minimums. The wrong answers, and I promise you, the test will absolutely try to feed you these, are the Federal Reserve and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or CFTC. Let me spell that out crystal clear. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission oversees the broader markets, but they do not set margin levels. And the Federal Reserve, their authority completely stops at securities. They have literally zero power over futures margin. It is always the exchanges.
And here's the thing, the exchanges don't just set these numbers once and then go take a nap. They watch market volatility like a hawk. If the market goes completely crazy, the exchange panics and raises the requirements to ensure everyone's collateral is adequate. And here is a huge exam trap. Those margin hikes hit existing positions too. Imagine Fiona the farmer is sitting comfortably on her couch, holding an open short position she initiated like 3 weeks ago. If the exchange raises the margin requirement today, Fiona has to top up her account immediately, even though she isn't making a new trade. That hike applies to both new and existing positions. So let's talk about how the exchange actually structures these numbers, because they give you two distinct ones. Step 1 is the initial requirement. This is the higher amount of money that must be on deposit just to open a brand new futures position. Step 2 is the maintenance requirement. You want to think of this as the absolute minimum floor. As the market naturally moves, if prices go against Trey the trader, his account equity is allowed to drift down from that initial level, but it can only drop so far. The maintenance requirement is his safety net. If Trey's equity actually touches that floor, warning sirens go off, and that triggers a dreaded margin call. But wait, before Trey or Fiona can even worry about initial or maintenance requirements, they have to do a ton of paperwork. And this is exactly why the broker cares so much. You literally cannot trade a single contract until the paperwork backing the performance bond is fully signed. First up is the margin agreement. By signing this, Trey formally acknowledges the performance bond terms, and critically, he agrees that the firm has the right to ruthlessly liquidate his positions if he fails to meet a margin call. They will not wait around for him, they will just close him out. Second is the transfer of funds agreement, which authorizes the firm to effortlessly move funds between the customer's various accounts to satisfy those strict margin obligations. And that brings us to a final, really provocative thought to leave you with today. We know Trey doesn't pay interest on a loan, and we know he has to keep his equity above the maintenance floor. But if Trey's equity drops and physically hits that maintenance floor, what exactly happens next? Does he just owe a little interest penalty? Or does he owe a massive performance bond top-up to get back into the paranoid landlord's good graces? Keep that exact scenario firmly in your head, because how that specific top-up works is exactly what we are going to break down in our next explainer on margin calls. See you there.